RPGaDay doesn't talk about the elephant in the room. It invites the elephant in the room to talk about itself. The 27th question for RPGaDay for the year 2017 asks us about the essential tools for good gaming for you. I hope this will be a fun question and will take people throughout everything they do for gaming. They don't have to get mired or stuck in one particular concept of tool, such as the best type of mechanical pencil or the slickest type of dice or whatever. Hopefully people can take it and run with it and look at everything that encapsulates how they play and pick out the parts that they consider to be essential for their enjoyment. Now for me, the type of play that I enjoy most is the long-form, ongoing, never-ending campaign. So I'm going to share 3 things which I consider to be an essential part of how I get there. All right, the first essential tool is the process of reaching consensus. And I see this as 3 distinct phases of going from no game, no idea of a game, to everybody playing the same game together in a state of agreement and acceptance. So in the written blog post, I described this as comprehension, then context, then consensus. And what we're talking about is, well, a lot of people will incorporate the concept which is now called session 0, right? They've formalized the process of every time you sit down to play a new game, you have a session 0, you make your characters, you talk about the world and set some expectations and then start to play. I approach the idea of session 0 a little differently, although often I will have an actual session 0 if appropriate. I like to, after the group has been recruited, start to have short conversations. And this is described in a video I've got out there called Explaining Your Game. But in brief, some short conversations that take place leading up to the game about specific concepts, about the developing characters as they're being built, about the connections, some of the things that happen in a session 0, so that when we have session 0, we're actually talking about very relevant things. We don't waste a lot of time. If we don't have a session 0, nothing is missed. Once play starts, the campaign play itself provides us with context. So everything which was talked about prior to play is now making more sense, especially if this is a game that nobody has played before. As they see how the system really works, as they see how their character design choices actually influence play, and as they see what kind of pressures or tensions or pushes and pulls are happening between the characters and with the setting and so on, it's a chance to now really comprehend, really understand in context what everything we've talked about has meant. Then we need to decide if we like that or not. If we don't like it, or if there's some parts of it that need to be adjusted, adjust them. If everything's going smoothly, accept that and move on. But at this point, if play continues, we as a group now understand what play is, what it means to be those characters, how the system works and all of that. It's time to accept it, realize we have reached consensus, and carry forward in joy, or whatever mood the campaign encourages. So that's the first and most essential tool. Now this tool really only gets used in the beginning stages of a campaign. It exists before the campaign starts. It's a major part of the first number of weeks or first number of sessions, and then it drops away into the background. It might come back later when a campaign goes through some major shifts and upheavals, when characters have changed a lot, they've grown a lot, developed, been harmed in some way, been tied to responsibilities that they didn't expect, members change, this sort of thing. Then it's time to revisit this tool and reestablish comprehension of what's going on, connect everything that's happening to an explicit context, achieve consensus, and move forward again with confidence. So that's tool number 1. Tool number 2 works similarly, and this one I could just simply call system mastery. This is encouraging everybody at the table to know the system. So the easy way to do this is to introduce specific things piece by piece in the first sessions until the system is exposed, and actually talk about it. Have the books available so people can read a rule or a piece of setting information or whatever. Be willing to stop at a lull or a low point in activity in the session to talk about how the rules affect play, how the character choices are causing things to happen or not happen, how their expectation for performance might meet or exceed or match or whatever the stats that are actually on the page, and get everybody in alignment so that expectations and actual performance through invoking the system will match, so that we don't have this feeling that the character is underperforming. We're not surprised by a character that is not behaving in a way mechanically that we expected, that sort of thing. So by encouraging system mastery, by encouraging everybody around the table to be familiar with the system, you end up with play that may be more satisfying, can reach different capabilities that people who are wary of the system might not be willing to go for. You might get more tactical play if that's of interest. You might get more intrigue because people understand how the social dynamics work, and so on and so forth. People can engage more of the system, and then everybody at the table can be working toward creating exciting events. So, system mastery. And how do you get there? Well, like I said, you have books available. Be willing to stop the session and talk about how things are working, how things can work, how things might be interpreted, what a next step would be, what development is possible or not possible, that sort of thing. Build that understanding of the world conceptually, and then tie it to actual practice so it can be remembered and built on. Another thing I like to do is if a character is unusual or unique or in possession of a skill that nobody else has, work with them, build up comfort with it so they know as much about it as you do, so that you can work together to bring that unusual skill or ability or whatever into the system smoothly, and then other people can look at it and learn how it works and add that to their repertoire of knowledge about the game. So that's the second tool I consider to be important to establish this long-term campaign play that I like. It's an essential tool for good gaming. The third one is one that doesn't fade away. These first two, comprehension, context, consensus, and then system mastery, these fade into the background, disappear, and may or may not reappear as the campaign continues. But this next one, or this last one, the third one, it's present throughout. The only time it doesn't exist is prior to play, and it is recaps. Now, recaps work in two different ways in my games. The first way is that at the beginning of every session, except session 1, there's a recap, like a point form, just very quick, eliciting from the players what happened today. And that's a good way for the game master to get a sense of what made an impact on the play group, what they think is important, what they think is interesting, that sort of thing. And you can fill in the blanks of details that they might have missed. This is a formal kind of listing of bullet points of things that happened in this session. So you can remember the session and you can remember the recap. This happens at the beginning of every session about the last session, and it happens at the end of every session about the session you've just played. So we have a kind of a ritualized act of committing the session to memory, then we have a ritualized act of activating that memory the next time you play, and this bookends every session. So this is the minor recap. What did we do today? Hopefully, you'll also talk about why those events were significant, why they were liked or disliked, speculation about characters that were met or things that took place, and that sort of thing. The next type of recap is the grand recap. And this one takes place in low points in what might traditionally be called stories. But if you're running an open-ended campaign, you don't really have stories. You have periods of high activity and low activity. You have periods of downtime. You have periods where the group has scattered to take on individual goals and this sort of thing. And this is a great point to have an overarching recap of what we've encountered so far and what it means to us. And again, this works with the players, right? How they feel about NPCs and the other PCs, what they think intentions are, what they see as the development process of these characters, how these characters are growing or changing or reacting to positive and negative forces within the game world, what they are going to try to do next, what they have actually succeeded in doing, putting everything in context, and now, I guess, exposing, by looking backward through the events of the campaign, exposing what story, if any, has been emerging. And it can often be surprising when you realize what kind of tale you're in looking backward. It feels like life when you're playing it, and then looking back you can reveal the tapestry or story of the lives of the characters. This encourages character growth. This encourages planning and development and the harnessing and care and feeding of game resources in the world that aren't just the characters. It allows for an expansive stable of NPCs to develop and orbit around the characters, and so on and so forth. It, likewise, is what I consider to be an essential tool for the type of play that I like, for good gaming. So I hope these three things, which have been mentioned but not together on the channel, might be of interest or of use. If you're using techniques like these, let me know about them. If you have something that can add and support what I've stated, please let me know in the comments. That's really a big part of what RPGaDay is about. Sharing what we do, talking with like-minded and differently minded people about what we do, growing and enjoying the hobby even more. That's the question for day 27. Tomorrow's Monday, and I hope Monday treats you well. To hear others' responses, use the hashtag and search for RPGaDay.